there, and welcome to Acutely Amanda, a podcast where I share short fiction that stays with you, along with the real life and craft behind it. I'm Amanda, and today's episode is all about a gourd. Let's get into it. The Ghastly Gourd by Amanda McNeil. You've had the small decorative pumpkin since last October when you bought it at a suburban farm stand with farmland extending endlessly out behind it. You've never been one for carving pumpkins. The slimy feel of their guts is too much for you. But the small decorative ones are a different matter. Their colorful variety, not solely that putrid orange, appeals to you in a way you cannot explain. So on that particular overly warm fall day, as they all have been for the last 5 years or so, a fact we all seem to be ignoring like some silently agreed upon cultural gaslighting, you stopped your car and selected a decorative yellow gourd with the lightest of orange stripes. You took it home to the city with you and placed it inside your apartment. The first few days, it both was an item for you to admire and the perfect social media prop. You expected it to rot in mere days, especially in that heat. You refused to use the air conditioner in October on principle, but instead, it lasted. You supposed to yourself that they must last longer uncarved. On November 1st, it remained its healthy self, so you turned it into Thanksgiving decor with a checked ribbon tied to the stem. You set it in the middle of your kitchen island. The sun beat on it through your large south-facing windows. Still, it lasted. On December 1st, you placed it on the dresser in your bedroom, away from guest eyes, as it was certainly not winter holiday decor. Soon it blended into everything else on your dresser: jewelry box, humidifier, self-care basket. You forgot about it. Until this October, when you drove by the same farm stand. The same thought of stopping for a small decorative pumpkin was interrupted by another one. Did you ever compost last year's? You cannot remember. You must have. It would surely have rotted by now, stinking up your apartment otherwise. Your cheeks burn as you think of how you've watched oh so many TikToks of free cleanings of filthy apartments and thought to yourself, how can anyone let it get that way? But now you have. You must have, because you cannot remember composting that pumpkin, and no pumpkin would ever last for a whole year. You do not stop for a new pumpkin. Instead, you race home. When you enter your bedroom, the pumpkin no longer blends into the items around it. It's all you can see on your dresser, and it looks exactly the same as when you placed it there. You pull out your phone, scrolling back to the last photo you took of it on Thanksgiving. The pumpkin in the middle of your island with an apple pie. You hold the photo up next to the pumpkin. It looks identical. You retreat to the kitchen and the cabinet under your sink where you keep your blue nitrile gloves. You pull them on, grab a compost bag, and return to your bedroom. You try to lift the pumpkin. It doesn't move. Vivid visions of the mold and putrefaction that must have formed on the pumpkin's bottom to attach it to your shelf like that accost you. Turning your head away, you pull again. It still doesn't move. You must get it off your dresser. You move the things nearby away from it. Nothing seems to be around the pumpkin's edges. You return to the kitchen for your chef's knife. Bringing it to the bedroom, you try to slide it under the pumpkin. It hits resistance. You push harder. It doesn't budge. You decide to simply slice the pumpkin in half. The knife slides through the top easily enough with a sickening squick, but when it reaches the bottom, you meet an impossible resistance again. You pull the knife out, expecting to see grotesque slime clinging to it, but it just looks the same as any other knife stabbed into a pumpkin. You stick the knife back into the pumpkin and pry the halves apart. It looks mostly normal inside, a yellowish flesh and seeds, but at the bottom is what appears to be a green vine. Odd, because you saw no vines on any side of it. That's when it hits you with a sickening thud in your stomach. There's only one place it could go. Down into your dresser. Drawers you haven't opened in 311 days. You set the knife down and pull open the drawer. Inside is a rectangle of vines with papers tied up inextricably among them. You release the drawer's handle and stare down into it. As you do, the vines begin pulsating an inch out of the drawer, spilling over the edges at the rate of cooling lava. They move toward you. You remain where you are as they wrap around your ankles and up your body, along the side of your neck, curving beside your ear, then out in front of you. The vines hold one of the pieces of paper. You try to close your eyes, but other vines hold your eyelids open. You cannot look away from the death certificate. It's the tears seeping out of the corners of your eyes that makes the vines let go. They retreat back into the drawer, folding in on themselves into a neat rectangle. They settle the death certificate on top. You reach out a hand toward it, pull it into yourself, and collapse onto the floor, sobbing as the vines sigh. The end. This story uses second-person point of view. If you're not familiar, point of view is the perspective a story is told from. In this case, second person means the narration uses you instead of I, first person, or he, she, they, third person. It places you directly into the story, making it feel like the events are happening to you. It's a rare choice in fiction, since most stories stick to first or third person, but when used well, it can be incredibly powerful. Second person can serve different purposes. It can add humor, or like in this story, it can create a deeper emotional connection and push the reader to reflect. Some people find this point of view unsettling or even off-putting because it forces them into an unfamiliar perspective. There's not the distancing that's there when you use the other points of view. But interestingly, many marginalized writers, especially Black, Indigenous, and writers of color, find it a natural and even desirable choice. One theory is that marginalized people are already expected to step into perspectives that aren't their own in daily life, so encountering that experience in fiction isn't as jarring. Beyond that, second person can be a powerful tool to remove the distance between reader and character. While first and third person let you observe or experience a story with some level of detachment, second person makes it impossible to ignore. You are the character. For marginalized writers, this can be an intentional choice to create an immersive experience, one that forces readers to engage with alienation, lack of agency, or systemic injustice firsthand. Ultimately, second person can act as both a window and a mirror. It pulls readers into perspectives they might not otherwise inhabit, while giving marginalized writers a way to explore their own identities and lived experiences in an intimate way. I want to give a shout out to Valerie Valdez, whose piece for SFWA really dives into this and illuminates the research about marginalized writers and experiences with second person point of view. I'll link it in the description, but you can also Google Valerie Valdez, SFWA, marginalized writers, and you'll probably find it. I found her perspective really illuminating. While I'm a white woman, I do hold other marginalized identities. I'm queer, and I've never personally found second person off-putting. In fact, I naturally wrote in second person in high school before realizing how polarizing it was, so I learned something new alongside you today. Now, about the inspiration behind this story, I do buy little tiny pumpkins from little farm stands in Massachusetts. Let's not talk about how long I have left one sitting and had it not rot on me, because I don't think that's something the internet needs to know. But we will say it's longer than you might think. And if you've been around for the whole season of this podcast, you'll know that I lost my father when I was 29 years old to alcoholism. And this story is partially inspired by the fact that, I didn't know that when you lose someone like that you actually are given a copy of their death certificate. And that experience of looking at that death certificate is just so, even to this day, it's been many years since he passed. If I look at the death certificate, it brings me to a very particular feeling and experience, which I tried to describe through this speculative way. And, I think that's something that we can all relate to, is having a document or a pile of papers that bring you to a place you don't really feel like being emotionally, and so you stick them in a drawer somewhere, right? So I think that's the universalism here in this story. So that's it for this episode of Acutely Amanda. If you enjoyed this story and discussion, drop a like and let me know what resonated the most in the comments if you're on YouTube. Subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. And you can also find more of my writing in a longer form on opinionsofawolf.com/publications. Thanks for watching or listening. See you next time. Bye.